People of Earth, we come in peace.
Welcome to this neighborhood, neighbor.
I am the Martian ambassador.
Des Moines and all of Central Iowa live. Max World is your world. Every day we talk about the issues and topics that matter most to you. And as always, it's your voice we want to hear in Max World. So join the conversation by calling 515-244-0077. And now, here's the host of Max World Live, J. Michael McCoy.
7 minutes after 3 o'clock, 3:07 on the 16th day of September in the Lord's year 2016, a day that will live in infamy. I love saying that. I mean, it won't. Today's just another day. Unless you had something... Did you have something awesome happen to you today? Just a day that you're going to remember? Did you have maybe something bad happen? And you feel like you need prayer? But you just don't want to go to the church and ask for the pastor, and you really don't have anybody in your circle that is comfortable with that kind of stuff? Well, you're listening to a radio program and a radio station with a radio host that serves people by out loud, up front, in your face, Jesus freaks kind of prayer. So if you've got something on your heart that you'd like to share with us today and ask for prayer, we'll be glad to do that. 515. I'm gonna give you the text line, the Service Legends text line, because that's the easiest way to let us know. 515-809-0993. Or if you want to call Jebediah, you can. 515-244-0077. And let us know what we can pray for you for today. I keep telling you, this is not your grandmother's Christian radio station with Oral Roberts and who else would have been on back there? Jim Adams, or not Jan Adams. Jim, what was his name? Jim and Tammy Faye Baker.
Baker.
There you go. He's back on television now. Jim Baker is.
From Branson.
From Branson, Missouri. That's right. All right, so let me introduce you to our guest for the show today. Ryan Jorgensen, Pastor Ryan Jorgensen from Harvest Bible Chapel. We told you months ago that they were going to have a Apologetics conference on the 16th and 17th of September, and, well, guess what? It's here, the 16th and 17th. And so Ryan has brought the gentlemen in who are going to be teaching this apologetics class. And one of their names is Jeff, and then there's Luke. And so, because Luke has a biblical name, I'm assuming he's more important. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah. What is Jeff? Is that like a French name?
Just totally insignificant, I suppose, biblically.
No. Biblically. Well, we never know. Well, I guess we do know. I'm continually being told that I can't make up stuff in the Bible. That I'm supposed to take right what's there. But anyway, I'll share something with you later. I'm on a trail, and I don't know. I'll tell you about it later. So Jeff Durbin, welcome. You've been on the show on the phone.
Yes, sir.
And we appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
And Luke, you need to be right over there. And
how's it going?
Good. And you guys are both from where?
Phoenix, Arizona. We're Apologia Church is the church that we shepherd, and so we're both elders at Apologia Church.
Apologia.
Uh-huh.
All right. Now, that obviously comes from the word apologetics, is it the other way around?
It's the other way around. But,
okay.
Apologia, that's the word that the Apostle Peter draws from in 1 Peter 3:15, which is kind of the charter verse of Christian apologetics. And that's where he tells Christians to be ready with an answer, a defense, an apologia to everyone who asks you a reason for the hope that's within you. And so the church itself now didn't begin as a church. It started off as an outreach ministry to the cults and to different worldviews, teaching Christians how to engage them, preach the gospel to them, answer questions. And after some time of ministering at a hospital, a drug and alcohol rehab, as a chaplain there, God made it clear to us, as I was pastoring at a church as well, that it was time to plant a church to take care of these people. And so that's where Apologia Church came from.
So you're the guy that planted it?
Yeah, we planted.
Both you guys?
Yeah,
okay.
Apologia.
All right. And you left another church?
Yeah, I was a pastor at Life Quest Church in Phoenix. At the same time, I was also the chaplain at a hospital, and we also at the same time were doing Apologia Christian Ministries, which is the apologetics and outreach ministry. And yeah, so after some time at the hospital, so many people were coming to Christ out of addiction that it was clear we needed a place to take care of them. And so the elders of the church that we were at laid hands on me, and we planted out of a drug and alcohol rehab family building, and everyone in the room was either fresh out of addiction or in halfway houses or something. And there was probably 10 people in the room the first night, and that's about 7 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now how many people?
Probably if everyone was there all at once, about 200 people.
That's awesome.
Yeah, God's been good.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this about me, but 2,397 days ago, I put the plug in the jug.
Right on.
I was a drinker for 16 years.
Okay.
But I didn't start out as a child. I started drinking when I was 35.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, had a little identity crisis and didn't know who Jesus was, so I turned to a bottle.
That's right.
So, but you're right. And what God did is God got me sober so he could then come save me, because I had a false sense of salvation. But anyway, I'll tell you that later. That's not important. Ryan, how are you?
I'm blessed.
You are. And your church is going to be featured here in the next couple of weeks in the New York Times.
Yeah, that is right. Yeah, there was a journalist that came out. They're doing a big story on religious liberties. And our church background and our history with Dick and Betty Odgaard with the Gortzhaus and us now being in that building, that just naturally brings our church now on riding the wake of that story. And yet this specific story now going bigger beyond just what happened with the Odgaards, but now going into the bigger subject of religious liberties in our nation. They really wanted to know what normal, if you will, Christians and evangelicals are thinking about that subject. And so spent a good amount of time with the journalist out there, and then also the photographer, and hoping and trusting that what I've said is going to be accurately reported by the end, but we'll see.
Oh, gee, it sounds like you've had experience with written journalism.
Right. And usually, I'll say this, most of it actually has been positive, but I think part of that is I'm honest with the journalist. I'm always like, hey guys, I'd really appreciate if you don't edit out Jesus, if you don't edit out gospel, if you just, please be accurate. I've heard of horror stories where Christians are not represented well. Oh, yeah. And so far, everything has gone well. So we'll see how this one goes. Well,
that's what we call Iowa nice. And I think you probably have heard that since you've been here, 4 years now?
4 years, right.
Even when we try to be nasty, we're still nicer than the nastiest. And I don't know where it comes from, because we're very much a Democratic-controlled state. Even though we have a Republican governor, we're very Democratic in this state. And so I'm going to say something horrible here, but I don't find Democrats very nice. So they somehow, though, become Iowa nice every 4 years for the caucuses and every August for the state fair, and that's just how we roll. So, Ryan, thanks for being here. Bob Monster at the Cat in the Hat watching the chat, and you can also text us at the Service Legends Truth text line at 515-809-0993. Anything there yet, Robert?
Not yet, but I've been reading about our guest here.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes. And I was just texting my son because he would be interested
in listening to this.
Yes.
Okay, well, it's that and available on podcast. All right, so here's what I thought. Here's what I want to try. I want to try to be the devil's advocate, which really came naturally to me years ago. I have to make sure that my audience doesn't think I sprung a leak, because I'll get a phone call, or Chris will get a phone call. Mac was talking about not thinking Jesus was the real deal on the radio the other day. And I don't want to do that. Maybe, Frank, maybe you should play the devil's advocate. I don't think you could you?
Probably not.
Yeah, I don't think you could. The guy sitting over here, Bible knowledge, amazing.
Right on.
Amazing. month ago, I'm found myself in Daniel 10, where the angel comes to Daniel and says, "Sorry, dude, I was delayed for 3 weeks. The accuser himself was holding me up, and then Michael came and took my place so I could come and deliver the message to you that your prayers have been answered 3 weeks ago." And I just thought that was so cool that was happening. Well, Brainiac over here, Frank Thomas, the verse, goes back with no Bible in front of him and goes back to Daniel 8 and 9 and explained to me what was going on and why that was such a big deal that message finally was delivered to Daniel.
Right on.
And that's not unusual for him. Now, his social skills are somewhat that of a rabbit. So just be careful there. He was my feral cat. He would call into the radio show, and one day I put out some warm milk, and that was 3 years ago?
3 years ago this November.
Do you remember what date?
No, but I was on with Chris Bradshaw and Chrissy.
Chrissy?
Yes, the former.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the lesbian.
The gun-toting 357 gal.
Yeah, okay.
Who flies helicopters as an EMT.
Yes, she does. Something else, too. All right, we're going to take our first break, and then when we come back, apologetics. And what is it? We're going to start at Jesus 101 here. So if you're listening and you're going, oh, man, I'd like to learn about this, but they're going to start like at a doctorate level and then move into a professorship. No, we're not. You know Max World. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. We're going to basics. Understand what these guys do. We got all 2 hours to get this done. But your questions are very important, not only to you, but they're important to me. So feel free to call up 515-244-0077 and challenge them, ask them questions, learn all you can learn today. And then if you're really interested, you could go to the Apologetics seminar that's coming tonight and tomorrow at Harvest Bible Chapel in Grimes. We'll tell you more about that when we come back live here on The Truth. 99.3 FM, powered by webcast1live.com.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
Hey everybody, I brought Northern Lights Pizza! And it's got Graziano sausage!
Rockton Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for the opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens, rock on! This is Pat McManus for Rockton Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobson Foundation, and this station.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
21 minutes after 3:21 in the afternoon, 16th day of September in the Lord's year 2016. Tonight, the Apologetics Conference begins at Harvest Bible Chapel in Grimes. Is there a cost for that, Ryan?
Yeah, it's $15 for both days, or there's half off, if you just can come tonight or just come tomorrow. And you just get on the harvestdesmoines.org website and click on the Apologetics graphic that you'll see, and you'll be able to track from there how to do that.
And how many people do you have signed up tonight, do you know, or tomorrow?
I think we're at this point, we're looking at about 120 or so.
Good.
Yep.
How many can you track how many of those come from that? How many of those don't come from your congregation?
Yeah, we already are. Yep. And I would, that's a good question. I would say maybe
half,
30 to 40% are not from our church.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, you had a nice picture of the sanctuary today. Looks like you got all the chairs set up and everything, so you're ready to go. All right. So with me today is Luke Pearson and Jeff Durbin. Both of them planted a church. Now, if I say something that isn't right, let me know. They both planted a church in Phoenix, Arizona, called Apologia, and it's after 1 Peter 3:15. And what does 1 Peter 3:15 say?
It says to sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to give an apologia, a reasoned defense to everyone who asks of you, a reason for the hope that's within you, to do it with gentleness and reverence. So it's known as the charter verse of Christian apologetics, because although you can see throughout Scripture, Christians are called to love truth, to proclaim truth, herald truth, defend truth. That's a specific text that addresses the question of standing for your faith and giving a reasoned defense. And the word apologia is an interesting one because that's essentially like courtroom terminology. Going into a court before a judge to argue your case, you don't go in there willy-nilly. You don't go in there with sort of a cavalier attitude. You go in and you present reasons, you present evidence, you present truth, and so the word that he draws from apologia is an important word. Christians are to be prepared to, and this is what's important too, to everyone who asks us for a reason, which can seem like a daunting task. Everyone, the Buddhist, the Jehovah's Witness, the atheist, the agnostic, the Rosicrucian, everyone. And so the important point there with apologetics is that this call is a call over all of our lives. If we're about the work of the gospel, proclaiming the good news of Jesus Christ to people, when we proclaim the good news of Jesus Christ, that comes with questions. And so we have to be ready with answers. And so that's where the name of the church came from. Again, it was initially, we had nothing in our minds of planting a church.
Yeah.
I was a pastor. We wanted to provide answers for our faith and prepare Christians to do the same thing. And then God just threw a wrench in it all and told us, you're doing this now. And so,
wow. Yeah, because you as a pastor, you're doing that anyway.
Yeah.
But he wanted to highlight you, I guess, and your ministry.
Yeah.
Frank?
I was reading something in the newspaper not too terribly long ago that self-professed atheists has risen in this country from 14 to 19%. That's about a 5% growth. I don't know many churches are getting a 5% growth. So atheism is something that has to be battled as a Christian and give legitimate answers to our faith. Bible was never written to prove God. It merely asserts that God is a reality.
That's right.
So the question would be,
Jeff, don't encourage him with like you're right or yes, Frank.
One of the things.
No, that's actually good. That's a good point. That's an excellent point.
One of the things that you battle with atheists is they can't mold the brutality of what they see as the Old Testament God and the lovingness of the New Testament God, because So I put this question to you like this: if I want to knock off Bob and I hire a hitman to do it, I didn't pull the trigger, but I'm as guilty as the hitman who potentially knocks Bob off. Okay. Mm-hmm. So here's God up in heaven who has to put his hands down into this muck and kind of straighten things out. And he had to order some pretty brutal things in the Old Testament. Kill men, kill women, kill children, burn the village, don't take any spoil. And a lot of atheists see that as just horrendous, that they can't believe in, they can't mesh those two gods. What's your answer to that?
Well, I think we discussed this a little bit on the last show when I called in. The very first thing I would do is not grant the unbeliever their pretended neutrality. That's something that I mentioned. So, for example, when the unbeliever, say the atheist in this case, the militant devotee of Dawkins or Hitchens or Krauss or something like that, says to me, well, you believe in a God who ordered genocide in the Old Testament. You believe in a God who, has a record of his wicked ways in the Old Testament. Sure. I could never follow a God like that. The first thing I would point out is that the unbeliever has now stepped off of their foundation, their professed view of the world, and now they're standing on mine. So I would first point out the borrowed capital that's taking place in that very moment. So the unbeliever is saying things like genocide is wrong. The unbeliever is saying people are being slaughtered. And what I would point to is the very fact that the unbeliever, in this case, the atheist, his posited universe, what he says is true about him and me and the world, is that we live in a universe that came about by sheer accident, that it's ungoverned, it's unpurposed, there's no particular personal order to it, that all of us are descendants of highly evolved societies of bacteria, that all of us go back to ultimately fish, we're descendants of fish. And so what I would say is, well, Mr. Unbeliever, don't you believe that there is no objective morality? Would you agree with someone like the professor of biology at Cornell when he says that there is no immanent morality? We live, we die, and we're gone. We're absolutely gone when we die. Would you agree with that statement? And most unbelievers, atheists in particular, militant atheists, if they're honest, intellectually honest, will say, well, yeah, no, I agree. There's no objective morality. And so what you're left with in that case for the unbeliever is you're left with mere sympathy and personal preference. You know, you don't particularly like genocide, but it's not morally wrong, is it, in your worldview? Well, no, it's not absolutely morally wrong. So what happens is there's borrowed capital that takes place because the unbeliever, according to the scriptures, is in the image of God. He can't help being in the image of God, and you're right. God doesn't go about the business in the scriptures of trying to prove to the unbeliever that he exists. He actually goes the other way. He actually says in the Psalms that the fool says in his heart there is no God. Now that's not God engaging in capricious name calling. That's God describing more than intellectual failure like you're stupid. It's really a moral indictment upon the unbeliever who refuses to recognize what is obvious to all of us: God's existence and the fact that he or she is in the image of God. So what I would point to the unbeliever immediately answering the question is, you say there's genocide in the Old Testament and you have a problem with that? And they say, well, yeah, I do. I'd say, so what? You're protoplasm, a bag of biological stuff, and so am I in an unguided, unpurposed universe. And so really, you don't have any right with your worldview to have any moral indignation or complaint against my God. Now, I would point to them, but I do notice that as someone who's in the image of God, because I believe you are, you've had to step away from your unbelieving worldview and your view of origins and your anthropology, that we're all just ultimately African apes and descendants of bacteria. In order to argue against God, you've had to borrow from him. What'd you just borrow? What did you assume when you said genocide is wrong? That human beings have value, dignity, and worth? That there's meaning and purpose? And so I would point that you are now disengaged from your platform, your worldview, and you're borrowing from God in order to argue against him. That's the start. Now, you have another question.
Well, the quick question would be, a statement would be that they've assumed that there's a God in their statement.
Right.
So they've jumped on our land,
right,
and believing for some moment to answer my question, there is a God.
That's right. Now, they would say, well, I'm just giving you a hypothetical. But you're right. It's more obviously than a hypothetical, because they're saying, well, God did such and such. And it's good to point out to them, and the reason you have a problem with human beings dying and doing things to one another, like killing one another, the reason you have a problem with that is because you're in the image of God, and you know that's not merely protoplasm. Now, in your worldview, it's only protoplasm. Fundamentally, it's just stuff. Now, in my worldview, starting with God as the principium, as the central reference point, the source of my knowledge, when I start with God, I actually can say something. I acknowledge outright that when you see in the scriptures human beings killing one another, the Bible gives you the historical narrative, it gives you the record, it doesn't whitewash it. It says these people killed one another, it says this person sinned in this way, and in many cases God directed them to do something, like go and kill all these people. I want to say from the outset, as someone who's in the image of God, looking at the scriptures, I have every reason to be emotionally disrupted because of that. And I don't think God's calling us in the scriptures not to be emotionally disrupted because he simply says as a decree, go do such and such. We're still supposed to feel like that's not good, in the sense that, not that God's actions aren't good or that it's not morally, that God doesn't have a morally sufficient reason, but in terms of creation itself. In the beginning of the Bible, it says what? It says God created and he called creation what?
Good.
Good. And so what we know is when human beings are killing one another, that ultimately displays something that is a result of the fall. But God has a morally sufficient reason. When God sends his people against the Philistines or any other people to actually wipe every one of them out, God is acting in that point as righteous and holy, just judge. Where in that point, God is acting as judge, as a righteous judge, against people who hate him and are at war with him. And he has every morally justifiable reason to actually engage in that justice. And so for the unbeliever, I'd say, you don't have any basis to complain. My answer to you is ultimately, so what? And as a believer, I can actually look at that situation and say, this is God doing to sinners what ultimately we all deserve, and that's justice.
You're listening to Jeff Durbin and Luke Pearson. They are from the Apologia Church in Phoenix, Arizona, a church that they planted, what'd you say, about 4 years ago?
About 7 years ago.
7 years ago, okay. And they are giving a Apologetics conference tonight and tomorrow at the Harvest Bible Chapel in Grimes. Pastor Ryan Jorgensen is here with us today, and if you just chime in anytime you want.
Hey, man, this is why we're bringing them in here. Let them do all the talking.
I know, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Amen, when God's word is given in such a clear way. I love it.
Yeah, so if you'd like to learn more about this, it's it's $7.50 tonight?
$7.50 just for each day,
Yeah,
and 15 for the total.
And you'll get some, probably not booklets, but you'll get sheets of paper and some guides, or no, nothing?
We'll have things. It's just so worth it. We made this thing dirt cheap. I mean, it's so worth coming.
Luke has T-shirts.
I do have T-shirts, not for free.
Well, I got some free door prizes.
And what do the T-shirts say?
They're Apologia Radio. We also have a radio show.
They say, I heart Max World.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
No.
Yeah.
Tell people where they can hear that radio show.
ApologiaRadio.com. We also have Apologia TV. So we actually have our own studio back in Phoenix where we have a weekly podcast TV show that airs on the NRB network 3 times a week.
Yep.
And we're putting up new content every week. We got a bunch of new stuff coming out. We actually just started a little 5-minute webisode. We just debuted this last week. So a lot of really cool stuff.
Webisode?
Yeah, just little scripted shows, little 5-minute shows we've put together. And
like a scripted series, web series.
All right.
Yep.
All right, let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue with Jeff Durbin and Luke Pearson from Apologia Church in Phoenix, Arizona. It's going on tonight, the Apologetics Conference at Harvest Bible Chapel in Grimes at the Old Gort's house. I hope you consider going tonight. If not going there, then I'm assuming I'll see you downtown with the Gaithers tonight. Either way, we'll see you later.
Northern Lights Pizza's amazing garlic butter makes amazing breadsticks. Now available in 12-ounce bottles at Northern Lights, Hy-Vee, and Graziano's.
Northern Lights Pizza. I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs,
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
It's 3:38, 22 minutes before the top of the hour, Salem Radio Network News, and then we'll continue with Jeff Durbin and Luke Pearson, who are both from Apologia Church in Phoenix, Arizona. Apologia, of course, the Greek word for
that we get apologetics from. It means defense or reasoned defense.
Okay. And if you've never heard of apologetics before, explain for just, well, I want to hear Luke. Explain to somebody, all right, talk to me like I'm a 6-year-old. You're trying to explain to me what apologetics is. What would you say?
Well, like reasoned defense, honestly, is the most basic understanding of the word. Essentially, it's a lot of people say, "Oh, it's an apology," because it sounds like apologia. Yeah. Apology for what you believe in. I was like, no, I'm reasoning from the scriptures. I'm showing you from the scriptures what God has revealed to us through His Word about everything, about creation, about how we should live, Christ, the gospel, etc.
Okay, so it's a language.
I wouldn't call it a language. I mean, there's definitely
in what
terms,
sense?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. Right now, I write op-eds for the Des Moines Register. I've got 24 a year, and my next one is going to be. I'm writing it right now, so this is really coming out raw, but it's coming out. And it says the headline, which they always change, of course, is religion equals rules without reason. And in that op-ed, I'm going to talk about the language that we use in different religions or different denominations. For instance, there are people listening to this radio station that would tell you that the only thing they need to know about apologetics is if you don't agree with me, you're going to hell.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're talking to someone who's Islamic, then the language is, if you don't agree with me, I'm going to kill you. Okay? If you're, and don't be offended, please, if you're a Catholic. I'm just trying to give examples. If you're Catholic, if you do something wrong, you go say you go to confession and say 5 Hail Marys. That's not a term that's in my language or my vocabulary. So does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, apologetics would definitely have a particular category of language and definitions and things like that. But fundamentally, apologetics is the art in many ways and the science of the defense of the Christian faith. Now, here's the thing. The word doesn't have to be simply owned by Christians. So you have atheist apologists.
Right.
And you have Mormon apologists. You have socialist apologists. It means ultimately a reasoned defense, a person who defends a particular position. However, historically, Christian apologetics has meant the defense, of course, of the Christian faith, and that defense of the Christian faith is supposed to be wrapped up in the call to the evangelism, the call of the gospel.
Matthew 28.
Yeah, and so Christian apologetics is not supposed to be. Now, this is what's really important. And I think what's probably distinct about this evening, Christian apologetics is not supposed to be disconnected from Christian theology. And that might seem like a strange thing to say. Well, you might say, well, yeah, obviously, right? The defense of the Christian faith, the historic Christian faith, should be wrapped up in the theology of the Christian faith. But unfortunately, there are different streams within the Christian church. Well, I think solid people that love Jesus, that I think ultimately have a philosophically inconsistent view of how to defend the faith, and ultimately theologically, in a sense, unfaithful. In some senses, unfaithful in terms of how you go about defending the faith. Do we defend the faith from a position of neutrality? So, for example, you have very popular Christian apologists today that will say things like, in public debates with well-known atheists, look, I'm not here defending the Christian faith. I'm here defending theism. And I want to say that I think that is, number one, philosophically inconsistent. I don't think that a general theism can be defended consistently. And I think it's ultimately unfaithful in terms of our Christian commitments. To defend a general form of theism is not the goal, because that doesn't get someone to the gospel. Getting somebody to the general idea that something is out there and there is some kind of higher intelligence doesn't bring them to salvation. They need Jesus. And so the Christian faith is supposed to be wrapped up in, or the Christian apologetics is supposed to be wrapped up within the call of the gospel. So...
I have a good atheist friend who was his father and mother are Calvinist ministers, grandfather a Calvinist minister, and we've debated this avenue of free will and predestination to the nth degree. And he lays it as a trap. Well, if God is sovereign and he parses out who's saved and lost before the game even started, you're saved, you're lost. Then you got the eternal torment thing that you toss in there for those who were hardwired and programmed to malfunction. You're going there. Then the idea of a subordinate covenant versus a covenant of equals. In other words, so if God is the creator, he would have, and he created free will potentially. Then there would be a force out there in the universe greater than God. Free will. So it's this idea of, if God is the creator, he would have had to have had provision for all alternatives that would have happened because of his creative power. That's why he alone could only die, not an angel, not an animal, not a human. Because if God is creator, he has to take on the responsibilities of potentially, I don't want to use this word in the wrong way, but the malfunction of creation. If in the right to choose, there's the ability to choose wrong. So how do you parse all that out to give the atheist the answer they're looking for? Because they feel like the Christian is in a trap here.
I'm a little lost. So we're in Calvinism discussion
You're a little
now.
lost. I do this 2 hours a day, 5 days
I'm a
a
little
week.
lost. Where's the atheist question in this? That sounds like it was a challenge between two Christian forms of soteriology.
They're trying to present that whichever way you believe, it's bunk.
Okay.
Because a loving God and an eternal burning bonfire doesn't jive. But then in their mind, if there's free will, then there's a force out there greater than God.
Right. So the first thing I would address to the unbeliever is that he needs to abandon his concern with inconsistency. So this is the first thing, again, not granting the unbeliever his autonomy. I want to answer the question, but I don't want to grant the unbeliever his pretended neutrality and the autonomy that he's presenting and giving the question. So the first thing I'm going to do is show the unbeliever that he needs Jesus, because his appeal to inconsistencies, things that are illogical, don't make sense from his perspective. And the reason why he continues to appeal to things as that's inconsistent and we should therefore not follow it is because he's in the image of God. Because if his atheism is granted, if we live in the world that he says that we live in, then there are no universal, abstract, invariant, necessary laws of logic. So, for example, the materialist, the strict naturalistic materialist, doesn't get immaterial abstract entities like laws of logic in his worldview. It's strict materialism. All that exists is matter. Now, if somebody's listening right now, they're saying, I don't know what any of that means. Here's the point. All there is matter in motion to this militant atheist. Where have you ever seen, weighed, seen what color a law of logic is? Where are these laws of logic? Where do they exist? If someone says, well, those are just happening in your brain, I'd say, fantastic. What you're talking about are biochemical responses happening in your brain, which means free will. You don't have it. Because if the unbeliever's view of the world is true, and what's happening right now in terms of their actions and thinking is just brain chemistry, then what it means is they're fizzing. They couldn't help doing what they're doing right now. They're merely the result of chemical responses. So actually, in the unbeliever's worldview, the atheist, the materialist, he doesn't have free will at all. He's just fizzing. So he loses free will. Now, in terms of the challenge to the Christian faith, what I would point to, are we coming to a break here? We'll end up, okay. I'll answer the question on the other side.
And tell me the question again.
The challenge to the Christian faith in terms of God's sovereignty and free will.
Okay. Whew. Between you and Frank, I got an earful. Luke, how do you do it all the time?
I'm a good listener.
Good. All right. And you're a good listener.
Does your wife agree to that?
Thanks for being here today, and
She
thanks for
would.
listening
Yes, she would.
to The Truth, 99.3.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Rockton Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens. Rock on. This is Pat McManus for Rockton Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobson Foundation, and this station.
Northern Lights Pizza, your home of the tasty crust. Our garlic butter sauce now available in 12-ounce bottles at Northern Lights, Hy-Vee, and Graziano's.
Northern Lights Pizza.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common, everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. From From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
All right, 10 minutes before 4 o'clock, 3:50 in the afternoon. 16th day of September. Tonight is the Apologetics Conference. Not conference. What do you...
Yeah, we're calling it conference.
All right.
Webinar. What was that? Webinar? Seminar? No. Webisode. I like that.
Webisode. Is this going to be broadcast live on the internet? Is it going
to be
podcast?
It will not be live, but we are doing audio recordings for podcasts after, as well as HD video recording online, YouTube, those kind of things later.
All right, good. All right, so Jeff Durbin, and if you're just joining us, Jeff Durbin and Luke Pearson, who planted Apologia Church in Phoenix, Arizona 7 years ago. And they are here to give the Apologetics Conference at Harvest Bible Chapel tonight up in Grimes. $7.50 a night, $15 for both sessions. That's just amazing. And so it'd be a good night for you to go learn. And if you're listening on the radio right now, you know that, wow, something to learn. Now, did you get a text from the Service Legends Truth text line? Yeah.
Yeah, I did. Love Ryan Jorgensen from afar. Dream of one day moving to Grimes and attending his church. Can't wait for the conference.
Grimes is awesome. That's all I got to say.
Grimes is awesome. You have one of the best restaurants. You have probably 3 of some of the better restaurants in our market. You have the Corn Patch, you have the Radish, and you have Food Depot. Is it called the Radish anymore?
Yep, still the Radish. Yeah.
And then Food Depot. I don't know if you've tried all 3 of those, but
I sure have.
Every one of those is
another one's good is Mustang Grill. It's kind of a newer one downtown Grimes.
Downtown Grimes. Okay. All right. So, Jeff, you were in the middle of something. I needed to wave you off because we were coming to a place. So,
So essentially, if someone says, well, that seemed really heady, I think I want to just start this next part of the answer by saying the Christian faith is supposed to be able to, because it is in fact the truth, engage at any level of discussion, whether it's the high level of academic debate and discussion, whether it's at a scholarly level or whether it's at the Sunday school child level. We should be able to engage in every realm. The simple answer to the unbeliever that brings up any kind of inconsistency is, so what? Have you forgotten what you believe about the world? If we grant your premise, if we grant your view of origins, if we grant your anthropology, your view of mankind, men and women, children, if we grant it, then inconsistencies are fine. Why are you complaining? You see, you're acting like there's such a thing as truth. You're acting like laws of logic are actual things we are obligated to hold to. You're acting like integrity and discussion is something important to actually maintain. But if we grant your presuppositions about the world, then we don't get any of those things. And so the answer ultimately is, so what? But I would point to the unbeliever when he brings up a challenge, say it's against God's sovereignty, his rule and power, his providential control of history, and say free will. Again, to the unbeliever, you don't have free will in your system, because this is not something that a Christian needs to point out to the unbeliever. You just read atheistic philosophers and authors who engage this issue of human behavior and activity and thinking, and they are really in a perplexing situation for themselves. And that is that if we can bring all of human behavior and thought down to brain chemicals, things firing off in our heads, in this 3-pound mass in our heads, if we bring it all down to that, then there is no free will. We're just doing what protoplasm does under these conditions and temperatures. That's all we are. There's no free will. So when now we step into my worldview and we start asking questions about God's sovereignty and the freedom of humans, we have to think first and foremost, what does the Bible say about our condition? And what it says about our condition from the beginning, it says that God created his image in the garden, and we were to be people who reflect God's glory. We're supposed to be God's light in the world. And it says in Ecclesiastes that God created man upright, but he sought out many devices. So when the unbeliever says to me, God created man hardwired to fail, that is fallacious. The Bible actually says that God created man upright. He didn't create him sinful. He created man upright. And our first parent created upright, sought out many devices, and sinned. He was created with a creaturely will, a creaturely freedom. I would say the only truly free being in all of the universe is God. Now, we have a creaturely freedom, and the Bible says that post-fall, Jesus says in John chapter 8, we can go on for days here. John chapter 8, Jesus says, whoever commits sin is a slave of sin. So in terms of our wills, biblically, we have freedom, we have a will, but that creaturely will is enslaved to a sinful nature. And so we make choices. They're the choices that we want to make. We are making them. God's not putting a gun to anybody's head saying, you sin, you be bad. We're doing, when we sin, what we want.
All right.
And so, yeah.
I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
What time is it? 6. All right. We've got 2 minutes. So I'm going to pose the question, and then we can come back later. Here's what I got when I read Romans for the first time. And then I read it for a second time, and I read it for a third time. There was about 25 guys that went through Romans 3 times back to back. Took us a year each time. What I got from that is there's God's will and there's everything else. And this concept that there's a devil sitting on this shoulder and an angel sitting on this shoulder, and somehow as a human being I have this Samson-like power and ability to hold both of these supernatural powers off just because I want to. I don't think that's right.
No.
I think there's God's will and there's everything else. And I'm either in God's will as much as I'm able to be as a flesh-sinning human, or I'm letting go of God's will and I'm pursuing the things of the world, which would be the things of the accuser. Close?
Well, I think, yeah, there's something to that in terms of how it would depend on how you're describing the term will. In terms of what God's prescriptive will is for the world, where he says, this is what my will is, this is who I am, this is what I'm calling you to do. In that sense, yeah, as fallen creatures, we can step outside of God's, this is what you're to do. We can sin against God. But in terms of God's overall sovereign will over the world, nobody steps out of God's will for history. Nobody actually thwarts God's purposes. Prime example, it's perfect. The murder of Jesus. It says in the book of Acts, when they prayed, the church prayed, they said, gathered in this city against your holy servant Jesus, Pontius Pilate, the people of Israel, the Gentiles, Herod, to do whatever your hand predestined to occur. Those people did what they wanted to do, but they didn't thwart God. It was God's predestined plan that God would work together with their own creaturely will and freedom, their own desires, to bring about the biggest blessing and gift to all of God's people, and that's salvation. They murdered Jesus, God planned it.
Jeff Durbin is one of our guests. Luke Pearson is the other. They're from the church Apologia in Phoenix, Arizona. They're putting on an Apologetics conference tonight and tomorrow at Harvest Bible Chapel in Grimes. And if you want to go to Harvest Des Moines, is that right? Yep. Harvest Des Moines, and check it out. There's still seats available, and you can go tonight. All right, we're coming back live here in Mac's World. Remember, I always ask you to do the same thing at the end of the show, and I'll ask you again at the end of the next hour. Tonight, when you go home, give up that resentment you're carrying against somebody and forgive. Because remember, as you forgive, God will forgive you. Coming back live.